and we are recording episode number 3 of the All Surface Show. I am David E.J. Berger. You can usually find me on MP9 Tennis, our betting podcast with All Surface Media. But for our third illustrious week, we are here to talk generally about the sport of tennis. Me and Steve, Mr. Ace Previews himself, broadcasting from Australia. I am in California, although my background, since we are on YouTube, very aesthetically pleasing photo of the Tokyo skyline. Welcome in.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's very early here on a Friday morning. It's actually a public holiday here today for the AFL Grand Final that's tomorrow. Looking forward to chatting about another week of tennis action. Glad to see we got back for episode number 3. Almost like we're building some sort of momentum late in the season.
This train can't be stopped, Steve, although it might be stopped next week because I'm traveling to I should be able to do it next week, but I'm traveling to my 25th high school reunion next weekend. Not that I should have said a high school reunion, not dated myself like that. That was a mistake. I should edit that out. But yeah, should be fun times.
Very nice. Well, we can always bring the next episode forward a little bit. Maybe we can cram in 2 before I then go away for a couple of weeks.
Yes, your nuptials are impending.
They are. They are sneaking up at a rapid rate.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Maybe congratulate me after. We've still got some planning to do.
Oh, no. Oh, well, it's something getting married. I'll save my spiel. Let's talk about tennis. Steve, it is an odd time on the calendar now that the cups are over. They're in the rear view. Things are ramping up. We have 2 sites on the men's side, one in Tokyo, one in Beijing. And I wanted to start off by just asking you your thoughts on which is the most or the more intriguing draw between Tokyo and Beijing. I think for me, right off the hop, I believe Tokyo had some drama last night with Carlitos Alcaraz having a leg injury. He said in the post-match presser he was fine. He felt great. But I certainly think that opens the door to more drama than the Terminator Yannick Sinner probably steamrolling through Beijing.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things now when you look at particularly these type of tournaments where you've got these weeks of the calendar when you've got 2 major tournaments, you've got Alcaraz at one, you've got Sinner at the other. It's kind of like the 2 halves of a Grand Slam draw, really. Like you're just assuming that each of them are going to kind of find their way through with not a great deal of difficulty. Obviously, there was a lot of fear, overnight or 12 or so hours ago with Alcaraz with the ankle. I think we're probably in that kind of weird spot at the moment. I've probably noticed it more so on social media, and maybe it's ever since the NBA had a couple of Achilles injuries that anyone sees anyone grab at the lower ankle kind of area, the first thought is, oh no, he's done his Achilles, which probably would have been a disaster for the ATP in some ways, but it was nice to see him, obviously get back up. Obviously he kind of just stayed still, was obviously a bit of a shock in terms of what was happening. We've seen him hurt his ankle before. I think it was down in the Golden Swing. Was that last year? All the years have blurred into one a little bit.
A couple of years ago.
So look, they're probably so far ahead that maybe it does bring things back a little bit in terms of the bringing the rest of the draw into it. But yeah, as you kind of look through, particularly through that kind of middle stretch there of the draw that we have up on the screen, a lot of straight sets there through the middle kind of portion. But look, I think the thing, particularly with both of them being in separate tournaments, is there is a good opportunity there. We're going to see someone else in a final, which is a positive, and it's about who's going to be able to kind of make the most of the opportunities, particularly late in the season. Obviously, we've got the draw up there for Tokyo. Do you have any kind of interesting thoughts, or looking at the draw here, any players you'd like to see make a little bit of a push here late in the season?
Well, I want to comment on your Achilles scare, because that, to me, even saying that out loud, it's like, when are they going to pull the pin on this for Alcaraz? I mean, we got to keep this guy in shrink wrap ahead of the next Grand Slam. I assume if he feels okay, they're going to let him play. But if he's not, I don't know why they would continue letting him out there, knowing that it's basically slams or bust, or at least, thousands or bust.
Well, that's the thing. Like when we look forward to, say fast forward 20 years and we look back at the career of Carlos, we're not going to sit there and talk about how many times he's won Tokyo.
Definitely not. It's funny you say that, because Novak Djokovic had a stretch in which he ripped off 6 Beijing titles and never lost. How many times does that get mentioned, Steve?
Yeah. Just doesn't quite have the same, doesn't kind of fit in the, Roland Garros kind of category.
No. To your question, though, of intrigue, I think really interesting match tonight between Casper Ruud and Matteo Berrettini. Berrettini bounced back after we trashed him last week. I wouldn't say trashed him. I think we're just adjusting our expectations with Berrettini moving forward, and I think that conversation still holds weight, even with him getting a win over Jaume Munar. Munar also not exactly fit right now. I think something is going on with him. He's also played a lot of matches, the Spaniard. Yep. So go ahead.
I think one of the big differences with Berrettini playing Munar this week was, he saved break points. And you can suggest that, there's a lot of, there wasn't, a significant change in level, I guess, week to week. But when you can come out and you can save all 8 break points that you face, it's going to put you in a pretty good position. So, nice to see him back on court. Hopefully he can kind of make the most of the latter part of the season. Well, as you said, Munar, as an example, might be getting a little bit tired from having a pretty successful season now. He's, sitting in the kind of 40 in the world range. It's been a pretty successful season for the Spaniard over all surfaces.
Absolutely. Casper Ruud, I have no idea what to expect from him, but we're betting against him in this match.
What's the golf like in Tokyo? That's probably the.
It is an opportunity, though, for the Norwegian to show some prowess on hard courts, which he has lacked for some time. And, John and I on Match Point for supporters, any sort of hard court prowess for Ruud is really in the rearview mirror at this point. Has not shown anything for some time after bucking the trend with those runs in Miami, the U.S. Open. That's years ago at this point. So, and I think he had one hot January, I think the beginning of 2024, he had a nice ATP Cup. Might have even been 2023. A long way to go here for Ruud in terms of bouncing back on hard courts. So we'll see. Our boy Dardery, not our boy, but my boy Dardery that I mentioned, gets the nice win against Nishioka. Now he takes on Jensen Brooksby. That's a curious match. Brooksby took down Humbert. Hard to get a read on the quality of Ugo Humbert at the moment. He just can't get anything started. He's had a really injury-plagued season. And Brooksby, obviously a tricky player. His serve was working.
Lots of points to defend as well.
Go ahead.
Lots of points to defend between now and the end of the year for Ugo as well. Particularly with Paris, and I think it was a finalist here last year, so these points will come off as well. So yeah, a bit to do for Humbert.
A good opportunity for Dardery, who has built his rank up pretty high. I believe he's in the top 30 or in the top 40 at least to pick up more points here against Brooksby. Going to be a tricky match. We shall see. And Korda, pretty uninspiring match against Giron last night. Not sure what to make of him here in the bottom part of this draw. Could he pose a challenge to Fritz if he gets there? That'll be an interesting matchup, I think.
Yeah, certainly some interesting names. It'll be interesting to see who can make the most of the opportunity, probably particularly in that kind of middle portion of the draw. It's one of those ones where you could probably sit there and not be too surprised if Holger Rune, sits here at the end potentially as champion, but also at the same point, every chance for him to lose to Quinn in the next round. You get the full Holger experience with these type of draws. But they're the type of players that really shape these type of draws, because you look through the middle there, particularly if you think with Carlos maybe having some injury question marks, it really opens up opportunities for the likes of Nakashima, as you said, Brooksby even, Seb Korda, who hasn't been able to get any continuity with his game due to injury issues. Massive opportunities, I think, for all of them to be able to earn a decent chunk of ranking points.
You know what I actually think is the second biggest headline is Holger Rune. If he can get through, he needs this week. He's done nothing for months. And I talked about it on the betting show in our US Open preview, and we mentioned it last year. The last 2 years, Rune's ended up with 46 wins, I believe, even. And he's going to fall well short of that this season. But he typically adds up to that 46 the last 2 years in this part of the calendar. And so if he's going to start doing that, it's going to be this week. Ethan Quinn, if he doesn't beat Ethan Quinn, just pull the plug on the season, dude.
I mean, that's the thing. But look, he has been busy. He's been busy in the DMs of a couple of WTA players as well. So it's not all, he's not slacking off completely. He's putting a bit of effort in. But yeah, if he can turn his attention here, because this is a very winnable kind of draw for him. But the thing that comes with Holger at the moment is you can sit there and there is such a big variety between his best and his worst. It means he's getting caught out in these, early rounds of tournaments that, if he wants to be considered with some of the other top players, he needs to be making his way through these relatively easily.
Anything short of a semi-final run for Holger Rune here is yet another disappointing week for his 2025 season. Let's shift over to Beijing. Let me bring up that draw real quick. Got off to a pretty fun start last night. Some interesting.
And then Yannick Sinner played Cilic.
Interesting matchups. And then Yannick Sinner played dusted Cilic. I thought that might be somewhat competitive, at least in the first set. And it was not. Terrence Attman seems to be course correcting after his early Asian swing stumble. Nice.
And another meeting with Yannick Sinner now after their North American hardcourt catch up. I wonder if Yannick gets another Pokemon card. I'm trying to remember what he was given before that particular matchup, or if he goes for a slightly different tact.
Yeah, I guess Muller beating Khachanov is an upset. I feel like the only reason it's a big upset is because Muller has actually been trending down for a few months after a really nice start to this season, and Khachanov was trending up after trending down for the start of the season. So good on the Frenchman for outlasting Khachanov. But I also feel like just another poor result in 2025 for Khachanov.
And I think when you look at him, it's that thing of he is making a habit of performing when he needs to at the biggest tournaments, but it's these ones where you sit there and you go, well, hang on, we're not getting out of the first round in Beijing. That, you know, it's the difference between him, you know, looking at his current ranking. It's the reason why he isn't kind of top 10 in the ATP race at the moment. I think he's kind of 13, 14. He could easily be top 10 just with a little bit more consistency at these type of tournaments week to week.
I am interested to see what happens with Menchik, a guy we've talked about, I think, on our first two shows, and see if he can big serve his way through the market. The betting market has put that match into place, I think. Kecmanovic was in the plus 200 range. Now he's in plus 160. I think that's more correct. I think Kecmanovic is definitely live in the match. Go ahead.
And there's a Labour Cup component, I think, to this as well, that I think a few of the guys that were, you know, playing at the Labour Cup who had to play earlier in the week, you know, lost, which were a little bit surprising. So I think there's just probably a bit of wariness, I think, from people with this backing up, you know, getting from the US over to China to play. Not the easiest flight to make. So some of the younger guys may be struggling to adjust a little bit.
The better in me is hoping that we can get a Sinner de Minaur match and the total opens 20.
All right. De Minaur took some steps forward, I thought, at the Labour Cup. I made a comment online at the time. It was nice to see de Minaur play team tennis with some coaches that were coaching him, with Pat Rafter and Andre Agassi, having watched the Davis Cup the week before, where it just feels like Leighton Hewitt sits there and goes, "Come on, mate. This point, mate. Let's go, mate." And then sitting there and listening to the, you know, what de Minaur was saying around, you know, Agassi and Rafter and what they were suggesting, you know, he do and actually, you know, bring some tactics into it. He looked almost a different player, and I'm curious to see if anything translates over the next little period, or if there is any other kind of advice or anything that he took from the week. It may extend out and make him a little bit more tired, but I'm curious because he did look relatively solid in terms of some of the tennis that he did play.
A little Obi-Wan Kenobi for ADM. I can't believe that we have to sit through Goffin and Rinderknech again. Really? 2 times 1 week, huh? Cool. What do you think about Musetti? A lot was made of him over the weekend, losing another final under the radar in terms of the final quest compared to Davidovich Fokina is Musetti. I guess because Musetti had that splash clay run. Those were grabbing the headlines more than his titleless streak. I don't really feel bad for him, but it is curious he has not taken one down, I have to say.
Yeah, and look, I'm staring at the draw that you've got up on the screen there, and I'm looking at a potential round 2 matchup between Musetti and Bublik, and wondering that could be one of the potential matches of the tournament if they can both play to a level near their best. That's a surprise one, and I don't think it's going to be too long before we see Bublik as seeded in these type of tournaments. It's he's certainly coming on with quite a surge in terms of his tennis and his consistency. Basically, when he's playing anyone not named Sinner, it's been some impressive tennis.
It has good opportunity for Francisco Cerundolo to turn things around on his season. He has been trending down for some time. I want to say since April. It's not been great. Had a horrible French Open, abysmal grass season, and then did nothing on the hardcourt swing after. I don't say he was silent. I don't want to say he was silencing critics, but I do think that the haters were getting not proven wrong either. I guess he was at least not giving the haters more fuel to the fire earlier in the year with a pretty good golden swing and having some success in the early part of the calendar. Now he has the Labor Cup issue to deal with and taking on a very tricky Leonard Tien. But man, good opportunity here if he can get through Tien, pick up a nice dub against Kobly or Rublev. I don't know that I see it happening, but that would be a course change for the Argentinian.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an interesting little pocket there, I think, of the draw. A lot of players who have very, very high ceilings in terms of their level, but it's that ability to kind of maintain that. But yeah, when you look at that quarter, you've got some big names there with Rublev, Kobly, as you said, Sundalo, Manarino, even, is the resurgence of sorts. Massive little pocket, but whoever comes through, great opportunity there with a semi-final with, looking at the bottom quarter, Daniil Medvedev, we talked about a little bit last week. Felt like things were going really well until they weren't. In terms of, probably a somewhat improved level from him. I think served for the match against Wu and then was broken and things kind of fell away a little bit there. A great opportunity for both him and Cam Norrie for one of them to be able to kind of maybe, as you said, kind of course correct a little bit and set up a second round matchup with Davidovich Fokina.
Tough matchup for either opponent. Especially, I feel Medvedev is not wanting to see Davidovich Fokina in round 2. If you're Cam Norrie, you're happy to be through to the next round, I think. But if you're Daniil Medvedev and you probably have pretty high expectations, and that's a pretty tall hurdle early on here in Beijing. What do you think about Zverev?
It just in general, or
in this draw, and he's a pretty top line player we haven't discussed in our 3 episodes so far. I assume he wants to build some momentum going into the AO, but what is he really doing to improve? And what is he going to change up here to have that momentum going into the fall? I feel like he thinks just serving 80% first in is going to be the cure-all. And it's cleaned up a lot in his game. But other than that, we have not seen much improvement from the forehand, from just lack of aggression. I mean, how many times do you see these tweets where it's like an incredible 2-minute rally where Zverev loses in the end?
Yeah, it's a tough one. He's kind of dealt with over the course of the last, or most of this year, being kind of classed as the pseudo kind of best of the rest below Sinner and Carlos, just because he's ranked 3rd in the world. You probably could make an argument that Novak probably still potentially sits above him, but he just doesn't play enough tennis for the rankings to kind of suggest or justify that. I think they've obviously made some efforts with Zverev, I think, more recently, that they're trying to get him to be a little bit more aggressive on the forehand side. I think that's always been the knock, I think, for the most part. As you said, you can talk about those 2-minute rallies and things. He can rally on his backhand in his sleep most weeks. But I think maybe that there is something going on. I think that, there was some talk around a back issue through the US Open. Maybe there's something at play there. Didn't see anywhere near the best of him from the Labour Cup. So lost in straight sets to De Minaur and to Fritz. It's an interesting first matchup here for him. And it's probably going to be a good kind of measuring stick one for us to kind of see how he's perhaps shaping up for the course of this week and then in the back end of the year. But if the back is causing him issues and he's going to have a couple of, second round quarterfinal exits, I wouldn't be surprised to see him either pull the pin on everything except Paris and maybe the ATP finals. I guess he's kind of got that carrot to dangle there of, the finals at the end of the season as well from a ranking points and financial perspective. But I can't imagine him playing an exceptional number of tournaments between now and the end of the year if he's not quite 100%.
Here's an interesting question for you, Steve. Power rank these players: Alex Bublik, Alex Zverev, Alex de Minaur, and Lorenzo Musetti.
Are we playing over best of 3 or best of 5?
Let's say best of 3.
Best of 3. I would still have Zverev at 1, just on a proven longer term perspective. I would have, to almost go completely against that, I'd have Bublik at 2, Musetti at 3, and de Minaur at 4.
Ooh, wow. Just burying your countrymen.
That's not to say, it's a very competitive 4, but I just think if you look at it on the scope of every player, each of their ceilings, it's, unless de Minaur tweaks something either in terms of being able to get his first serve percentage up, or there's a coaching change, or he's able to kind of come into the net a little bit more or finish points off and be the assertive one. I think when you look at these types of players, he's probably going to struggle for the most part. I wouldn't put him above Zverev. The majority of his top 5 wins have come in exhibition / these kind of, Labour Cup, United Cup kind of team style matches. They're not coming at Grand Slams. So that's what he needs to do to take a next step. And I think, Musetti's shown a little bit more, I think, against some of the top players. And Bublik, more recently has certainly shot up with a rocket in terms of his consistency. So it's how would you rank the 4?
I would go Bublik 1. I'm into this Bublik 2.0. I think this guy's an amazing player, and yes, he's been vulturing 250s, almost akin to Casper Ruud back in the day. And the level of competition has not been great on his rise. However, his style, his game is incredible compared to Zverev. He has a lot more variety. He's just as big a serve. And he's aggressive and a shot maker. I mean, these are just qualities that Zverev right now is just simply lacking.
Mm-hmm.
I would go Zverev second because he is like, I think one thing that also gets lost in the sauce with Zverev is he's just a giant human tennis player. like just his size alone, the fact that he's pretty good at tennis, his size accentuates his abilities that much more. 3, I would go Alex de Minaur because somehow I actually feel like Musetti's even more underpowered than de Minaur. I wouldn't be playing de Minaur in my lineup on clay versus Musetti, especially slow clay, but any other surface I'm taking de Minaur. So to that, I would give the leg up to the Australian, and Musetti is my 4th ranked player here. If it was clay rankings only, I'd probably have him. I might have him number 1. But since we only play clay for a few months, I got to go with those other guys above him.
They'd almost be pretty close. You'd have them pretty close, wouldn't you, on grass as well? Musetti made the semi-finals of Wimbledon last year.
He did.
I would say, I'd say if you put all of them at their best, I'd probably have them as the ranking that I had. I think Musetti's probably come off his level a little bit this year with some injury issues through that kind of early to mid part. But I was just actually having a look as well. Bublik is on race to the ATP finals watch. I don't know if you've realized.
How far out is he?
Well, in the ATP race at the moment, he's 12th. Okay.
Can you bring that up? Do you know how to? Can you tech large your way to share screen here?
I don't know. I've got it on my phone, but I can pop the quick stats through that. He's 12th. Above him, we have Jack Draper, who is done for the year or is out for an extended period. It's probably going to depend a little bit maybe on Ben Shelton in terms of how much more he's going to play this year. But yeah, he's 12th at 22,370 points. He's 40 points behind Andrei Rublev, who's in 11th. And then they are about 300 points behind Felix Auger-Aliassime.
All right, this is why we're getting the reps in here. Look at me.
Yeah.
I have it up real quick.
So you think about ATP finals plus alternates. So if we go to the top, we've got Carlos, assuming his ankle's fine and he'd play. You'd assume Carlos in centre play. Novak, yeah, probably turns up. Zverev should play. Shelton, shoulder issue from US Open. Depends on how that kind of shapes out for him. Brits, Mazzetti, Demonor. So that's your kind of 8. You could say maybe there's 1 to 2 spots there that are, can be taken due to injury. You got Jack Draper, who's not playing, which then leaves next in line is Felix, who is only a couple of 100 points ahead, if we scroll down a little bit, from Andrei Rublev and Alexander Bublik.
Incredible that FAA is 10.
Yep.
Way to work the calendar, buddy.
Well, absolutely. And it's a great, it shows a big Grand Slam, US Open semifinal. And when you think about the majority of the winning Grand Slam and runner-up Grand Slam have been taken by the top 2 players. They've kind of hogged them for the whole year. Making a Grand Slam semi-final does get you a fair way into these kind of sections. So looking at what we've got up on the screen here, Alexander Bublik is one to obviously watch. As I said, we've kind of had probably question marks around Rublev and Ruud to an extent, and Holger Rune is the other one. Like that, these are the 2 that can probably make a bit of a surge here to be sitting in a group. I don't think I want to be playing Bublik on an indoor in a round robin for a lot of money and ranking points. It's going to be probably a little bit on the tougher side.
We've seen Rune scam his way up the ranks at this part of the calendar in the past. And you know what? Finishing in the top 8 or as an alternate, but not reaching that 46 win territory, probably a nice feather in his cap. And I assume something he is gunning towards. So that's pretty interesting, actually.
And you could probably make your way through there. That you said you work your way down to Lehechka at 18. It's and even Menchik there. You've got a decent kind of range there of a solid week or 2 here. It's going to make the likes of the Paris tournament pretty interesting, I think. We might even see a couple of sneaky challenger appearances from some people to try and boost and get some extra ranking points to be able to bump their way up. Both for the top 8 for the Tour finals, but also trying to get kind of a top 16 seed for the Australian Open.
There's 500 points this week. There's 2,000 events still left. And honestly, I'm going to just go out there and say I don't think Sinner or Alcaraz is going to play Paris. Could be wrong. I was wrong about how soon we would see them after the US Open. They're playing this week. But let's say Alcaraz pulls out of Tokyo. That's a dash to 500 points. That means he probably is gone from Shanghai. Who knows if Sinner plays? I assume he would.
It's the difference between Menchik being ranked 20th and potentially being ranked 10th. Like it's a pretty massive jump on offer for the players who have been competitive. And you look at Khachanov there, that's why it's a disappointing loss for him first up, because he is in this kind of fight here that we've got. Yes, it's aided a little bit by the fact that, you have to wonder when Shelton will be back. And, Jack Draper's obviously got his elbow issues. but there's a big opportunity there.
Yeah, the season's definitely settled for the top 5. I would even include Fritz, the top 6, but 7 through. Let's go all the way down to 19. I
I was
Dola's
going to say,
not
yeah,
getting
19. Anyone who's over 2,000 points at the moment, it's probably a decent chance for still being in the ATP finals.
Pretty cool. Okay, let's move to the women's tour, which is also in Beijing, and do a little check-in. I think a pretty interesting draw, actually. Let me bring this draw up real quick. We have Iga back, which is nice.
She's back.
And
it's one of those things where there's no A Sabalenka there, and it feels like it's just such a much more open draw.
Yeah, I don't
think to talk about.
No, for sure. I mean, Beijing is allegedly, a little bit slower compared to your Tokyos of the world, but still quicker conditions here for Swiatek, who can struggle when things are ticked up a little bit, at least be beaten. And we have Emma Raducanu, who's trying to build upon her year, pretty good. Osaka, same thing. And that's all in the top half of the draw. The bottom half, Mira Andreeva, she hasn't done much in a while. We have the return of Victoria Mbuko. That's pretty fun. And then the queen at the bottom. I mean, a lot of potential here for some pretty banger matches.
Yeah, absolutely. It's feels like things are really going to ramp up today in Beijing. I think, the big difference with this tournament is the seeded players got that first round bye. So something I'm always interested in is, you can get a player, to come in here and have to, make their way through qualifying, make their way through round 1. They've potentially got 3 matches on court and they're well adjusted to the conditions. And then they're playing a seed who hasn't, hit a competitive ball yet in the conditions. So there's a big kind of disparity between, some of the matchups. So there's certainly a few interesting ones there. Nice to see Zheng back on tour as well with an interesting match against Arango first up. Noshkova's another one who, has been really a little bit up and down this year, but has certainly showed her potential. Mira Andreeva is getting to that point where you want to see her kind of make the most of these kind of opportunities. But I will say, I feel like I posted out a comment around her record against players playing at home isn't crash hot. Lost again at the US Open to Taylor Townsend. It's one of those ones where once the crowd kind of gets against her, it can kind of, put her off a little bit. She's got Zhu Lin first up, playing at home in front of the home crowd. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. I think the Beijing home crowd's probably got a slightly different vibe to Flushing Meadows Centre Court. But it'll be interesting to see how Mira goes there. But yeah, it's one of those ones with stories, as you said, Raducanu's come back with an element of consistency. I think she looks finally settled with her kind of coaching setup. We've got Naomi Osaka with a tricky first round matchup with Sasnovich, who came from a set down to beat Chen, who's been going great guns at the ITF level and has started to translate that across to the WTA basically since the last month and a bit. She's had some success at WTA level. So yeah, lots of opportunities there, lots of names to keep an eye on. Yeah, I would love to come back. I said maybe even if we push our next episode early to next week, where we're kind of getting to the pointy end of this tournament. I think there could be some interesting kind of, not even third round into kind of quarterfinals. There's a lot of opportunities here for a lot of players to to make a move.
It would be nice to see Osaka back up for U.S. Open here. Not look, she can do whatever she wants, but
I'll let her know. I'll let her know.
It'll be fuel to the haters once again if she comes out and just gives a mediocre performance here.
Yeah, someone actually, to be fair, a player that from your country that I'm really interested to see play today is Katie McNally. She's got Elena Rybakina, and I feel like the thing for Katie has obviously been issues over the run with her fitness in terms of being able to stay injury free and get a solid crack at it. She's back in the top 100 now. I think she's got a matchup here that is very tough with Rybakina, but I'm curious to see how she handles herself with the situation. I think her form overall has looked reasonably solid over the last couple of months. So I'm curious. By no means do I think she's going to beat Rybakina, but I think she's a real chance with her game to maybe just throw Elena off a little bit.
Pretty interesting draw for the young Maya Joint here with Schneider. Not, good player, but not insurmountable. I think this is a really good pocket until Andreev.
Yeah, it's Maya has done, speaking as an Australian that's obviously been watching it pretty closely over the journey, she's done a tremendous job this year in terms of she's gone from being well outside the top 50, but she's early days this season. At 19, the level she's been able to show in terms of her consistency across surfaces has been incredible for someone who turned 19 in April. With a bit of pressure, I think, as well. For the Australian women's players, it's been tough. They've probably been, in previous years, they've always been sheltered or protected a bit by Ash Barty being at the top of the tree. And I think the last couple of years, particularly when you come down to the Australian Open, they're always happy to heap kind of pressure on the top home chances. Kazatkina will take a little bit of that, with her first Australian Open as an Australian in January. But yeah, massive opportunity, I think, for Maya to continue her rise, and she'll very likely be seeded at the Australian Open come January, which is a massive achievement for someone who is still a teenager playing WTA level tennis week in, week out, and not really chopping and changing between the WTA and ITF tour.
You mentioned the McNally Rybakina match. I've moved down to the bottom half. Some pretty wide open draws. Anna Samova, good test if she can back it up week after week. I mean, let's see it. But good opportunity here for people in the Paulini Anna Samova portion of the draw. And I don't think Rybakina has been her best for some time. And Coco, we'll see.
Coco feels like I just watch, and hopefully her serve. She's got a little bit of that Sabalenka from a couple of years ago. Once the serve clicks, I think she'll be well on her way. We just need to wait for the serve to click, I suppose. Looking there at the section of the draw you've got up there, just kind of in that lower portion, the 109 through 112 and the section there. Barbara Krejcikova against Katerina Alexandrova looks like a pretty massive second round match as well. Tricky little pocket there with Elise Mertens and McCartney Kessler as well. So curious to see kind of who comes out of that section. But yeah, I think there's a stack to talk to with this draw. It's going to be a fascinating kind of week and a half.
Is this Badosa's first time back in a while?
So she played in the Billie Jean King Cup. They played when Spain played against Ukraine, I think it was. So she made a comment afterwards that she, felt like she was back into a level near her best. But that was her first match since Wimbledon. Played Svitolina, lost in 3 sets, but it was pretty competitive. It was a 7-5 third set situation, so not a bad first up kind of pressure test against Svitolina in a Billie Jean King Cup.
Man, Layla down here. This is an interesting little pocket. Layla, Sakari,
Yep.
Penko, Bencic.
One of my fellow Australians, Priscilla Hon, making her way through with a third set tiebreak win in round 1 after some decent qualifying form as well. Beat Cocciaretto in the final round of qualifying pretty comfortably in the end. Someone who has probably been a little bit underpowered in terms of her game over the years and has struggled with a bit like McNally, has had some injury issues along the journey. But these are the type of tournaments and matches for her to be able to make a run. She looked solid. Some people might remember her beating Mboko in the final round of Wimbledon qualifying. I think saved a stack of match points and then ran away with it in the not ran away with it, but then won it in a third set. She's playing a really aggressive style of tennis, and it's a really interesting match and style to watch. Not afraid to come into the net, not afraid to play volleys from kind of weird angles and levels, not necessarily above the height of the net. I think that's a really interesting matchup with Jelena Ostapenko, with Penko in her current form. So that's probably one to watch for today's action that I'll certainly be keeping an eye on.
All right. Well, we've talked out the draws. That's future action. I want to talk about the best match I saw since last recording. It was actually the night after we recorded, and it was your countryman, Rinky Hajikata, taking on Camilo Ugo Karabehi. They played an absolutely nutty first set. 1 hour, 44-minute first set that Rinky thankfully came out on top of. I had some money on him. But these guys were going at it. Hats off to both players. The quality I thought was very high for two guys that people like to, including myself. I'm not a huge fan of Camilo, but he played really well. Great shot making, some great rallies. That was by far the best set of tennis I watched this week.
Yeah, look, my one's probably not. I wouldn't say it's something that you'd probably go back into the archives and watch again. But the match that I thought was pretty interesting was Marcus Giron against Brandon Nakashima. Just as two American players who both kind of sitting in that 30 to 50 range in the rankings. Big opportunity for both in the Chengdu quarterfinals. Nakashima got out of the blocks pretty comfortably early. I think took the first set 6-3. Giron came back, won the second set 6-2. And then the final set tiebreak, just when you think there's a lot of tension and everything on the line, Nakashima was up a mini break in the tiebreak. I think it was serving at 4-2. Mid-rally, plays a shot that clips the net. Giron thinks that the ball wasn't going to go over the net and goes to say, come on, and gets done with a hindrance call. Big difference between serving at 2-5 and 3-4 in a final set tiebreak. It was just one of those ones of, it just shows kind of Giron at the moment. He's there, but he's not getting the wins. He's, lost in 5 sets at the US Open. He's best, he's still playing some pretty competitive tennis. It's the third set tiebreaks that are killing him. And the same thing happened again, I think, yesterday with Seb Korda. He's there. It's just that getting over the hump of that final set tiebreak. So I'm on Marcus third set tiebreak watch for next week.
Yeah, he. I don't know that he necessarily should have won last night with Korda. It was a pretty even match. He was up in the breaker, and he did fork it. Yeah, I wouldn't say he forked it over, but he did lead twice.
Yeah, these are matches that he isn't expected to win. If you look at it on, the balance of probabilities, looking at the players that he's playing, but these are the difference between him being kind of ranked in the 40s and being seeded at Grand Slams. Come 2026. It just kind of shows, I think, particularly in the men's game at the moment, the fine line, I think, between taking that next step and, as you said, kind of making your way halfway through, or leaving early in the week from a tournament because you've lost in a third set tiebreak.
All right, we're going to ramp to the finish with some levity. We've already mentioned your impending nuptials. We had some nuptials happen over the weekend, and that is both of the Canadian standouts, FAA and Denis Shapovalov. They both got married over the weekend. Now, this is what John said to me, and I didn't really put it together, but aren't these guys friends? They planned their weddings at the same time, the same weekend. Now, I know that the fall is the off season, much cheaper. I mean, but aren't these like famous athletes? They're still cheaping out. I guess it's after all the slams. But yeah, they have a video, I think, down here of or when it was a picture up here. Yeah. Yeah, these guys being young. I just thought that was hilarious, actually. Like, oh yeah, I'm also getting married. I also wonder if it's like one of those things where like they have a relationship where one, like, they're competitive together. It's like one guy gets super annoyed at the other because like he has some, and then the other one tries to one up the other. It's like, oh, I'm getting married. Oh, really? Oh, well, I'm getting married too.
I mean,
he hadn't even proposed yet.
Yeah, I mean, full credit to these guys having the self-awareness to know they weren't going to get picked for Labour Cup. I think that's probably the big takeaway out of this, is that they knew that probably was off the table. Was it so in the space of 10 days? So like at least it wasn't the same day, but it's. I was hoping to see that Denis could kind of push on from his US Open match with Yannick Sinner, where he did challenge him for a couple of sets, but it seemed like that maybe didn't happen. First match as a married man started with a strong start, I think, against Altmaier, but ultimately ended in a loss. So 0-1 for Denis as a married man.
Yeah, what kind of conversation was that with his wife? Also, I'm gonna go play this tournament right after instead of our honeymoon. Although my wife and I, we postponed. We had a wedding in October, and then we didn't take our honeymoon till the Christmas break. So maybe that's the game plan. Maybe
the honeymoon was in Tokyo, and he just had to get one day of work out of the way first.
Also, both did destination weddings. Bold.
Yeah, it's the way to do it. Turn it into a holiday for. I mean, it's not really a holiday for tennis players. They travel year round, but it can be done.
Well, I hope yours
maybe not to that lavish level.
I hope yours goes off drama free. I had a lot of drama with mine. Might have ended up in therapy afterwards.
Oh, good. No, I have confidence that ours will be okay. Well, I will report back in a future episode. But we should be fine, I think. I hope.
The last thing I want to talk about is, and I think we buried the lead when it comes to Beijing for the men's side. This comically large trophy they give out. Now, this thing is way too big for this tournament. Look at the size. This is like if you won Wimbledon.
That's sizable. That's big.
Who do you think you are, Beijing, with this trophy? You're like, if you're a tennis player, first of all, I love the tweet that's like, nobody, that style of meme where it's like nobody colon mark, and then like somebody does something outlandish. It's like nobody colon tennis trophies, and then it's like all the weird tennis trophies. But this one, it's not that weird. It's just huge. And imagine if you're these guys, you have a mantle. Like this is taking up a third of the mantle. Like you got to like move over the Wimbledon plate for this thing to accommodate the comic size of it.
I mean, no wonder Carlos has gone to Tokyo this year. You can't be putting 2 of those up.
No. He's gonna have to get a storage unit.
Yeah, it's a smart play from Carlos to head to Tokyo. Get something a little bit more streamlined.
I mean, he's giving it like a full bear hug.
Yeah, he probably threw his back out.
The Stanley Cup bowl is smaller. Anyway, all right. Episode 3, Steve. We did it.
Yep. We did.
Three weeks in a row, having fun.
Yep. We're it's been good. It's been good. If anyone does have any feedback on anything that we're talking about, feel free to Holgaruna your way into our DMs and let us know. Maybe not with the same aggression as Holger, maybe just a little bit more cordial. But yeah, feel free to give us some feedback. But yeah, let's keep the momentum rolling late in the season.
Thank you for getting us over our hurdle of double-digit subscribers. Let's keep the train going. Please subscribe and then also comment, what is the most ridiculous trophy on tour in your opinion? If you've made it here, I should have said this earlier, and I got to get in the YouTube style where we're asking for comments. Comment on anything.
And if you do get to the end, something for our next episode, which I want to chat about, is I'm going to be ranking my top 3 tennis months of the year. So
I like that. I'll be thinking about it.
Next time. So we need to have a think about that. So feel free to put anything in the comments as well. If you could rank the top 3 months of the calendar year, keeping in mind, changes of surfaces, there's a couple of maybe months in there where there's a bit of Grand Slam action of multiple Grand Slams. There's a bit to kind of keep an eye on. Give us your top 3 months of the tennis calendar year, and we'll chat about that in episode 4.
All right, guys. We will see you next time.